In this lesson, we will see how to create DR cluster for Postgres using standby multi-platform. So this is my central console. I already have my configuration created. Click on Setup now. So this is the location of the standby cluster data files, and this is the location of the standby cluster configuration files. In this example, both these locations are the same, but you can use different locations to restore your configuration and the data files as well. The next option is to see whether if you want to create a hot standby or a warm standby. A hot standby is a standby where you can use it to connect and then extract reports, run queries on the standby clusters. In a warm standby is in a closed state where you cannot run any reports. It is constantly syncing with your primary, but the standby is closed. We look at how to create a hot standby cluster using Wal Streaming method. So the first and foremost thing you have to do is you have to ensure that you have to create a replication user. This can be a specific user or you can use a Postgres user as well. Let's create a specific user for this cluster. This is my primary cluster. So I'm going to create a cluster user now. The cluster user I'm creating is called as a rep user and the password. And one additional privilege that has to be given to ensure that we can read data and display data on the control console is pg read access all stats. So I'm providing pg read all stats to the rep user. This is done. And the next thing is I've already done this. I've already ensured that I've updated pghpa.conf file with the replication information here. So this is the replication connection. This is the username rep user. And this is a connection to my standby. And this is the connection to my standby. And this is the connection back to my primary in case when I switch over and switch back. And I've used trust method as MD5. So you need passwords to connect to your replication user. Let's go back to the central console. So this is the replication user. And let's say I type my password wrong. So as soon as I test my connectivity, it will fail the connection if my password is wrong. And I can test the connectivity now. The replication connectivity is tested. And now we'll start the standby cluster creation process using Wal Streaming methodology. So what are these steps involved? The first step is to ensure that you create a replication user on the primary cluster and also provide pg read all stats role to the particular user and update the pghpa.conf file. And once I provide the pghpa.conf file so that the cluster standby cluster can be reached, we create a replication start on the primary cluster, take a backup of the configuration files from primary and transfer it to standby, restore the data directory on the standby cluster using the replication start created on the primary. And once that's done, we restore the configuration directory on the standby cluster and start the standby cluster. And also enable the observer settings automatically. So my streaming is already in sync. So this is the replication methodology that I'm using to create the standby cluster, which is streaming, and it is already in sync. This is the method to create a standby cluster using streaming, Wal Streaming method. In the next lessons, we'll look at how to create the standby cluster using Wal Archive and Wal Shipping methods.